Right now, we are watching some major pushback on voter-approved policies reversed by Republicans in Missouri. Some 8.5 months ago, 58% of voters moved to raise Missouri's minimum wage and guarantee paid sick leave. Well, most of that is now going away. Most of Prop A is being rolled back. Governor Mike Kehoe just signed a bill into law repealing paid sick leave provisions and future minimum wage hikes, though it'll still get to $15 next year. We've covered the push during the legislative session by Republicans to roll this thing back, brought on in a big way by small business owners worried about the cost and tracking hours. Opponents of the repeal say there has to be a better way.
To say that the business owners' concerns supersede any of our regular workers' concerns, I don't think it's right. I think we got to find a balanced approach.
Missouri lawmakers were allowed to make the changes because it wasn't a constitutional amendment. Supporters of Prop A are considering trying to get that going for next year. Funding cuts are also causing controversy here at home. Governor Kehoe vetoed more than $2 billion worth of spending approved by lawmakers in the state budget. The cuts affected several planned construction projects and social programs in our area, local health centers, even the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Let's get to the heart of the matter with our roundtable of journalists. Please welcome back Brian Ellison, host contributor with KCUR, and KMBC9 political reporter Michael Mahoney. First off, let's get to the pushback on Prop A here. We know, Brian, many employers are already starting to roll back those paid sick leave provisions.
Right. There's a certain whiplash that has taken place. But it's not the first time that the General Assembly in Missouri has decided that voters' decision on a proposition was something they were going to revisit, and in fact, as they did in this case, overturn significant parts of what the voters decided. They did not roll back the entire minimum wage provision. Minimum wages will still rise to $15 in Missouri, although they will not continue to be increased in accordance with the cost of living, which is what voters had approved. But the sick leave provisions go away, and so whatever very small amount of sick leave workers may have accumulated in the last 6 to 8 weeks, that will be all.
We know that there are at least rumblings, Mahoney, of a petition drive to make this an amendment so it cannot be changed again.
Yeah, I think it's more than rumblings. The folks from Jobs and Justice are indicating right now that they'll initiate a petition process, if they can, to put this back on the ballot in 26 and make it as a constitutional amendment. Very similar to what happened with the abortion question in Missouri when that was installed in the Constitution, which is also now back in the courts. But most likely there'll be an effort to put this in the Constitution now.
We did ask Republican State Senator Mike Searpoy about Prop A last week. He, like many Republicans, told us that he'd actually like to see the initiative petition process change.
This initiative petition process is out of control. We need to get it fixed because complex legislative things need to go through the legislature where both sides can be heard.
One could argue both sides are heard at the polls, but Republicans have tried at least a few times to no avail to change this process, Brian.
Yeah, and they've done that particularly, Cody, with regard to laws that they would not have passed on their own. You heard pushback after marijuana was legalized in Missouri. You heard pushback, of course, last November after the abortion rights measure was approved. So I think what we're going to see is a continued effort by the Republican majority in the General Assembly to make it harder to pass these sorts of pieces of legislation by voters. In most cases, those changes involve increasing the threshold it would take, and indeed, if the threshold had been higher, abortion rights, marijuana legalization, those would not have passed in Missouri.
Yeah, and in a segment of the Missouri population, the voting population, this idea of changing the rules on initiative petitions is going over like a lead balloon. There are other conservative parts of the state and conservative legislators who want to do that and raise the threshold, Brian, as you say. But people are saying, well, what's the point of us voting if you're not going to abide by what we say?
Right. Let's talk vetoes and budget cuts, because that's another huge controversy that's starting to bubble up in Missouri. Brian, what stood out to you and what's the impact here?
Well, I think this is, of course, Governor Mike Kehoe's first term, and I think he really wanted to make his mark and say, hey, I asked for this much money. When legislators start increasing that amount, either on across-the-board statewide programs or by adding earmarks, those small programs in individual legislators' districts, he said, I'm not going to allow that to stand in the final budget. So he did make some big cuts to things things like higher education and child care, cost sharing programs across the state. But he also cut a lot of small programs. Here in Kansas City, you know, everything from the $1 million that would have renovated the Blueford branch of the Kansas City Public Library to a $25,000 grant for an urban farming program that delivered vegetables to seniors and veterans. It all went out of the final version.
Yeah, they cut, the governor cut $35 million in total of Kansas City area projects, and then there's another additional $5 million that are restricted, which means that it may be cut later on, and some of those nearly got gutted on the program. So it was a tough veto session, or a tough session for the Kansas City area.
And it'll be interesting to see what the ripple effect of these cuts locally is too.
Yeah.
Brian Ellison, Michael Mahoney, thank you so much.